most people think this is all that procurement do, what organisations call the 5 rights. Right stuff, right place, right time, at the right price and right quality. And I've had people say to me hundreds of times, well, what else do you need? That's procurement. But it's not, you see, because that is a zero-sum game, because it's based often around negotiation, where people want pence out with a pound, pence out with a dollar, cents out with a euro, whatever it is. They're struggling to get the price down all the time. Well, it can't become free, or you'll make your supplier go bust, and if your supplier goes bust, the knock-on effect of that could be that you go bust. So people then started thinking about total cost of ownership and applying some thinking to what they were doing. They improved the role of what the procurement organisation did. They started cost modelling. They looked at supplier market analysis, supplier management, SRM, all these things that we hear. But that's only achieving, and it's only very short term. Now, the short-termism, I think, is dictated to us by our friend Milton Friedman, because with the company needing to show a profit every 12 months, it means 3, 5, 7-year plans may go out the window, because what you want to assure is profit at the end of it. Now, the innovation here could be that people have longer-term views of what they do. And procurement breaks what they call in rugby the gain line. When you get behind the defenders, they've got to turn and face their own goal, and it gives you a greater chance of scoring. Here, the gain line means that you move away from this just achieving thing, moving into something that isn't just a cost reducer. You become somebody who supports the business strategy. You start to look at demand. You start to look at your customer relations. You start to look at how you manage money, not just totting up money spent. And you start to get involved in demand and specification influence. So procurement takes on a different role. And there are many businesses that do this stuff, demand management. At the top of the tree, I don't like the phrase world-class procurement, but other people do, is that people start leading. So they are influencing the business strategy and directly aligned with it. Because you will find in organisations, and whether it's procurement or marketing or other parts, people aren't aligned with it, and they just do their bit, because that might be what they get bonused on, so they have their strategy, and they're not looking at what the business is trying to do. But these people link up with it and build what they're doing around it. And they start getting into value management, and value management is a phrase that's chucked around in procurement all the time now. How do we get value? Well, value management is looking at the bigger picture, and it's moving out of the silo of procurement into the business. It's becoming commercial. Now, if people fancy getting into that world, here's one I prepared earlier, which is the ACE model, essentially, is what we call it. Aspiration, capability, and execution. If we just go back to the ladder, in the privacy of your own home, boardroom, under the stairs, wherever you want to do it, you could plot on there where you really think your procurement organisation is. Where are we really? And what do we aspire to? What would we like to become? And what do we need to become? Because some of this change won't just be internal, some of it can be an external driver of change. And they're the ones that are a bit more scary, really, and they're the things that Jeremy was telling us at the beginning. Those external drivers of change mean that you may have to aspire to something else. So I won't go through all the bits and pieces on it, but essentially, the aspiration part, what do you want supply management in your business to be? Capability, how good are the people and processes that we've got today in reaching that aspiration, and what do we need for the future to bring the change that we desire about? Execution, and this is one thing that interests me about China, because even working with some people in Beijing, they were saying to me that the biggest problem in China is execution. Capability is fine, their aspirations are great, but performance level can be hugely variable. So when you get to execution, what performance level is required for efficiency and effectiveness? How well do you need the people who work for you to be able to do their jobs, essentially? So that ACE model, added to the ladder on the other side, would enable you to sit down, I should imagine, with, a piece of paper and plot what you'd like to do. This is where we are, this is how good we believe we are, and this is what we'd like to make ourselves capable of. I think it's quite a useful tool for doing that. Okay, so how can people stay ahead of the curve? Or, if you want to look at it another way, how can we avoid this massive wave dumping us? Or you could look at it another way and say, is this the ride of my life? Is this the most exciting thing I've been on? Is this going to take us to new places and make my job that much more interesting? The things we need to take into account are that we have to understand that there's been an evolution in business. People have to understand that old business models that were based around a very mechanistic approach. That's why we use all these mechanistic terms in business process re-engineering and all this sort of stuff. It is something that is far more, molecular is the wrong word, but it's kind of these ecosystems you hear people talking about, and networks. They're not supply chains, they're supply networks. They're never linear. They tend to be spread out all over the place. That's why you get these situations in places like Bangladesh where a factory falls down and kills people. And people say, well, I looked down into the second tier of the chain, it all looked all right. You know, you're responsible for those things. It's the thing why CSR is so big now, is because CEOs and other people can go to jail as a consequence of not really looking into those issues. There is a new value proposition. I'll come to that more in a moment. Big data, I think, is another thing that's changing things. That's why I believe that the kind of benchmarking model of trying to be like so-and-so who are the best is going to go away, because people will start to look at themselves, like those previous two slides, and say, if we aspire to that, what do we need to do to change? Who do we need? What skills do we need? What are we good at? What are we crap at? Who do we know? Who knows us? You start to work in that area. Collaborating. I'm a firm believer that the RFP has had its day. I mean, it's 25 years old, and it's like, it reminds me, I did a little tweet about it the other week and put this thing up and got quite a lot of response, but not for the right reason. And it's a bit like the haka that the All Blacks do before a game. They stand there and people say, oh, it's not fair, the All Blacks do the haka. Well, I don't know, I think it's great. It's a statement of intent. But it doesn't mean they're going to win the match. It doesn't mean they're going to be better than the other side. And when I thought of that, although I'm Welsh and was bitterly disappointed on Saturday, when the All Blacks played England last year, and I went to it, they did the haka at the beginning and there was all the jeering going, and then England thrashed them. Now, the real game takes place on the pitch. And the haka is a wonderful tradition. I don't think it really puts the fear of God into anybody, but what's interesting about it is that RFPs are pretty much like that. You show us, show me what you've got and all that kind of. But to collaborate with people, to get close to them, to talk about customer of choice, to talk about somebody you can have a longer term relationship with, a better understanding with, I think is a far more accurate way of working these days. Risk has become all pervasive, and there's a new professional skill set. Okay, I've got to move on, I think. Procurement evolves. The function is going to shrink because the function, I think, is divided at the moment into two groups of people, doers and enablers. Doers are the people, to use a horrible, the sourcing geeks. I just want to do a deal. I want to do a deal. Who would think of buying a new washing machine or car by going around all the shops or going around all the dealers and seeing what the best deal is? Most people just look on the internet. And increasingly in procurement, people do that. There's plenty, people put their prices where you can see them. It's the relationship you can build that counts now. Profit is replacing cost savings. People want to know what procurement will bring to the bottom line, increasingly. This is where Friedman and the procurement cost out thing is merging, it's coming together. So the big budget battles will fade away. People won't want to be interested in that. The sourcing geeks are going to go, and I think procurement increasingly, as it gets smaller, will become embedded in departments. I was talking to somebody at the beginning who, interestingly, works in the Ministry of Defence. And years ago, I worked in the MOD, and one thing I saw there was that procurement people and engineers just used to fight all the time because they said they were coming from different directions. Well, they play on the same team. Their goal is the same. And they need to become embedded and work together on issues. So I think the buyer role will shrink. What else is different? Baby boomers are starting to retire. Birth rates globally, and I don't even know what that, I've tried to write that. Basically, people are retiring, birth rates are dropping. Traditional barriers to employees such as age and gender are being reconsidered. But developing a talent mindset in organisations is massively important, and organisations must believe in talent. They should recruit for talent and not background. What is this person's potential? They've got a degree in music, so what? Are they smart? Why do people get recruited from Oxford and Cambridge, where they might have done medieval English and then go and work in the city? Because they're clever. Recruit the best and the brightest. It's essential to success. It can develop and differentiate your culture, but it definitely breeds competitive advantage. Then, of course, you've got to deal with complexity. And when you've got to deal with complexity, you need smart people who aren't just going to do linear things and what we've always done. They're going to come up with ideas. They will be innovative. I'll have to go through these quick. So, what are the particular leadership attributes we want? Where will we find our special ones? And we need people who think, people who are special, people who are different, people who are ideas people. And you build them into your team. This is from a piece of work I did with Bath University about 3 or 4 years ago, which is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective CPOs. And this is what we found from a study of CPOs with the smart things. And increasingly, you will see these messages around the place. I won't go through them one by one. You'll get copies of the slides, so I guess you can have a look at them in your own time. You also need to look for certain things in your future leaders, I believe. These underlying traits, intensity, complexity, and drive. You know, engaged, self-directed, dedicated, exceeds expectations. These are the kind of people that will make the leaders of the future, the procurement leaders of the future. But I think this applies across business. Get the smart people. Know what to look for and recruit them for that. But when you have highly talented people working for you, they have different motivations. They work in a different way. They're often high maintenance. They think differently and faster and can leave you behind. People asking questions like, you know, I don't get that. Well, if you don't get that, maybe they do and maybe your customers will too. So you've got to have a degree of trust there. They need different kinds of challenges. They get frustrated and readily express themselves. And you might not like that as the CEO or as the CPO or whatever it is, but that's how it is. We need to think about that and reflect on it. So, to be a manager of these teams, learn quickly how to spot talent. Again, it'd be silly me reading these out, and I'm keeping an eye on the time. But you can read these when you go, you know, on your own, and see if those things resonate with you. Are they the sorts of things as a boss I need to do in the future, rather than just be the boss? And I mentioned earlier that the skill sets need to change. Procurement professionals, if nothing else, need to become business savvy. They need to become commercial. They need to be able to influence, persuade. They need to be collaborative. They need to be executive. And there's also I think there's a new definition of an expert now. If somebody is working in your procurement department, whether it's in a category or something else, they should be students of that industry. They should know about the markets. They should know about hedging. They should know about futures. They should know about those things because that's where you buy from and that's how you buy. It's not just a requisition and fill that out. That's the past. If you're going to get into demand management and value management, you must bring value. And that value will come through your expertise and knowledge. You cannot be a generalist. And the battle for talent echoes again stuff that Jeremy was saying about the talent pipeline is global. So, and look at the graduates that are coming out of China, look at the graduates coming out of India, how many graduates are here and what are they graduating in? You may look beyond our shores for people in the future.